Hey everyone, what's the crack? Over the past week and a half or so, I have been inundated with questions about these two pedal sets. These are the two hottest sub €1,000 pedal sets on the market right now. Both hydraulic, both have lots and lots of positives. Today, I'm going to put them head to head. So the first category is going to be looks, and looks are a very subjective thing, but I think you have to agree that these just look absolutely incredible. Some people may not like the orange, some people may not like the red, but in general they look really good. And it's entirely up to you to decide which one you actually think looks better, but just objectively they are extremely well designed. Just visually, they're not the standard cut metal plating that you see on a lot of pedal sets. There's a lot of design effort gone into them, and I think they both look extremely good. So I'm going to give them 10 out of 10. You can give them whatever score you like. The second category is going to be the installation and assembly. And even though the assembly and installation is extremely simple on both of them, there is one winner, and that is the Invicta pedals. The pedals already come assembled. The only thing you have to do is attach the clutch onto the two pedal set. So the two pedal set comes pre-assembled. You don't have to do anything there, and you can install the clutch. If you're only going for the two pedal set, this is a great option. Of course, the P2000 is also available in a two pedal set, but today I'm concentrating on the three pedal set because that's my own personal preference, and that is the top of the range that's being offered here. From an assembly point of view, you have to put these pedals on the Simagic base plate by yourself. As I say, with the Invicta, you just don't have to do that. Don't have to worry about all that. All you have to do is connect the clutch base plate to the main base plate, and then you're away. Now, that's not to say that the Simagic assembly is complicated. Each one of these pedals only has a 2-bolt setup. So 1 bolt at the front, 1 bolt at the back. So it's actually remarkably stable. So that's really good. I thought at first that maybe that might not be super stable. There are lots and lots of holes in the base plate for the Simagic, so you've got lots of mounting options. And of course, we'll go into more detail on the base plate in a while, but you can move the pedals left to right. You can't do that with the Invicta. So for those reasons, I'm going to give the Invicta a 9 out of 10 for assembly, and I'm going to give the Simagic an 8 out of 10. Next up is the software, and both of these have incredible software with them, which is a breath of fresh air to see. We're into a new era of software when it comes to pedals, and it really is what we expect from pedals now. Very simple calibration across all of our different sims, and the ability to change those graphs so that, you know, if we want the end of the throw to be more sensitive, we can. If we want the start to be more sensitive, we can do that as well. So the software is excellent for both of them. The main reason that I'm giving the Asetek a 10 out of 10 and the Simagic a 9 out of 10 is with the Simagic software, I did have occasional disconnects, which wasn't great. All I had to do was plug out the USB and back in. I did have some disconnects. I haven't had a lot of them lately, so I don't know, was it something just to do with my machine or whatever. Just in general, the Asetek software is that little bit slicker. That's not to say that this is the fantastic software as well. So 10 out of 10, 9 out of 10 for the software. Next up is the price, and the reason I'm doing this week is because from next week, the Asetek pedals are going to be considerably more expensive than the Simagic pedals. The Simagic pedals come in for this, what you see here, including the base plate, for €799, whereas the Asetek come in at €998. The Asetek pedals cost 25% more than the Simagic, and the Asetek price is going to go up. So they're in a similar price bracket. They're very similar pedals from the point of view that they're both hydraulic and in a similar bracket. It's very new and welcoming for us to see a 3-pedal hydraulic setup for less than €1,000. That's actually why I'm doing this video today, because people have been asking me about comparing which one should I buy, which one should I buy all week. And if you're watching this right now, you're probably one of those people. So yeah, it's a tough choice, but hopefully at the end of this, you'll be able to make a decision. And price might be a very motivating factor. For the Invicta pedals, I've given the price a 7 out of 10. Just because, relatively speaking, these are a good bit cheaper. They don't lack in functionality as such. And from a performance point of view, there's not a lot in between these. So these are 800, these are 1,000 on pre-order. They'd be €1,200 at their normal pricing. So €1,200 versus €800, there's a bit of a big gap then, and these all of a sudden are not under €1,000 anymore. These are still $799. If it matters, and it does matter to a lot of people, these are Chinese made and manufactured. These are European made and manufactured. So when you do buy these, they are considerably more expensive, but you are also buying them from a relatively more expensive economy. So at the end of the day, it is your money. But to some people, that kind of stuff really matters. Next up is the throttles, and the throttles on both of these are incredibly good. There is a winner though, and that winner is, maybe surprisingly to some of you, is actually the Simagic. It's a super simple pedal, all hand adjustable as well. You've got a little adjuster for the damping on the top here. This is a damper, and this is a spring setup. For me personally, the throttle on the Simagic is just that little bit smoother, nicer. When you put it too heavy, it's a little bit too slow, but I run it at 4, and I think it's just a really nice setup. So for both of these pedals, you can actually change the throw slightly. I think you actually have slightly more throw adjustment with the Invicta. I haven't explored that fully yet, but I do have both of them at the exact point where I would like them. So from that point of view, they're really good. The throttle on the Invicta is noisier than the throttle on the Simagic, so that is a consideration. And one thing for the pedals going forward, we'll cover it in build quality. We can actually see a little bit of lateral movement on the Simagic pedals, which isn't noticeable while you're using them. We'll cover it in more detail, but that is something to consider. You don't get any of that with the Invicta pedals. So for that reason, the throttle on the Simagic pedals is actually the best throttle that I've ever used on sim racing pedals. So that gets a 10 out of 10. I'm very, very happy with that. And the Asetek is not bad by any means. It gets a 9 out of 10. Also fantastic, fantastic throttle. Next up is the clutch assembly, and the clutch assembly on the Asetek is really nice out of the box. I haven't actually adjusted that at all. On the Simagic pedals, it's pretty bad out of the box, and it doesn't really feel like a proper clutch. I had to do quite a lot of adjustment, and I will be revealing that adjustment in my final review, but now it feels like a great clutch. There's not much in it, but on this occasion, the Invicta clutch is the better of the two. I give that a 9 out of 10. I don't know about giving clutches a 10 out of 10 in sim racing, because you don't get that real feel of a clutch because there's no, feedback. Pedals are very much an input device, and you don't get that output. With, braking and clutch, you kind of want that output as well. But that said, at the end of the day, it's just a clutch. We don't use them that much. We just want to change gear. So there's only so much, our expectations can only be so high before the costs become astronomical. So the Invicta clutch gets a 9 out of 10. And the P2000 clutch gets an 8 out of 10. They both feel really good, and I'm happy with them. It's just that little bit of configuration and stuff. I'd love if these came configured properly from the factory, and just to give that better first impression. Next up is the all-important brake, and the brake on both of these is phenomenal. Really, really good, even though they've gone for entirely different setups. So the Simagic setup uses a far more traditional car setup with a master and slave cylinder that kind of sits side by side. You can also mount this straight up, which is quite nice, but it's a far more traditional system, and that actually pushes a load cell. One other thing that Simagic does that Invicta doesn't do is the Simagic uses springs, and Invicta uses one large elastomer rather than what you see in a lot of pedals. You see multiple stages. Now they still kind of have that two-stage effect thanks to their Thorpe technology that they've designed completely themselves. So you get a nice kind of a build up to that harder brake, which is really nice. So you actually only need that one elastomer, whereas the Simagic uses 2 springs. Again, I had to do quite a lot of setup, quite a lot of messing about to try and figure out the right settings for this Simagic brake. For a while I didn't really like it at all. Then I came up with this setup, and it's really, really nice. So very, very happy with both of these brakes. As I say, we don't live in the era of force feedback brakes, and I'm not sure if we ever will, if it's ever going to be worth it. These brakes are about as good as they can be, and they get a 9 out of 10 from me. Next up is the base plate, and the base plates on both of these are very functional, very good. They're quite different. The base plate, as I say, is connected to the pedals clutch. The clutch pedal has a separate base plate. You connect the two of those together on the Invicta. It is a very rigid, very... Go away, cat. It is a very rigid, very good setup. The only thing that I don't really like about this is these little ridges. They tend to grip on rubber soles, They're not too bad when you're on socks. When you're using rubber soles, when you move your feet backwards slightly, they just, I don't know, they kind of grip my feet a little bit. I don't know if it's just the shape of my shoes or what, but these ridges are quite grippy. This is very, very smooth, but as you can see, there's no support for your heels whatsoever here. Simagic does offer a long throttle plate, which is nice when you're on this base plate. This one lacks a little bit in comfort when it comes to resting position, and this one lacks a little bit in comfort when it comes to moving from pedal to pedal. All in all, there's not a huge difference in weight between these pedal sets, and the base plates are both extremely good. I actually give both of them an 8 out of 10. They're not as good, not as adjustable as some of the other ones that we've seen, but they're super simple and they are definitely easy to assemble. Very, very practical. They're potentially a little bit long. I never really use the start of these base plates. I'm always quite close to the pedals, and the mounting holes are not right at the end here, even though there are some mounting holes that you could use on the Simagic pedal base plate. The Simagic pedal base plate has more mounting options than the Asetek, and the Asetek, one of the bolts, the back right bolt here, you have to disassemble the throttle slightly just to get at that easily, but again, that's not the end of the world. It's not a huge amount of work, but yeah, the base plates are very, very evenly matched. Next up is the electronics, and on the Simagic they have this little extra control module that all the pedals plug into. It's not super neat, not super tidy. You have to find somewhere on your rig to stick this, and it does expose quite a bit of wiring. Whereas the Invicta, it's very, very clean, very smooth. You only have that little sensor going into the pressure sensor on the torque system there, but other than that, cables are tucked in underneath. Even attaching the clutch is really simple, and they've got dedicated channels in the base plates so that none of that sticks out. It sits perfectly flush at the bottom, and the electronics module is built in at the back. It's actually even quite hard to film because it's just built into the base plate. So that's super, really, really nice. The Simagic one is a little bit more old school, a little bit more DIY. And it's yeah, it's just a little bit of a pity. On some pedal sets we get a nice little mount for it and it becomes a feature, but yeah, on the Simagic pedals it's not ideal. You can hide it away, but it would be nicer if it was built into one of the pedals or hidden away, or even something that you could mount onto the base plate that's just, yeah, tucked out of the way a little bit. This is a little bit DIY looking. So all in all, the Invicta gets a 9 out of 10 because all that you can see from an electronics point of view really is the pressure sensor. The USB-C cable that goes into the electronics is there, but there's a little guide, so it's not really in the way either. From an electronics usability point of view, I guess I don't know the quality of the electronics themselves. Everything seems to work great, but just from that point of view of assembling the electronics, I guess you have a bit more work with the Simagic than you do with the Invicta. So the Invicta gets a 9 out of 10 and Simagic gets an 8 out of 10. Next up is the build quality, and the build quality on both of these is phenomenal. The finishing on these, the attention to detail really is exceptional. I'm very, very happy with them, and I think that the Invicta does just edge out there. As I mentioned, the main reason with these Simagic pedals, we've got this little bit of wobble here. We've got, you can see that one actually makes a bit of a noise as I move it left and right. The cabling, the wiring is just a little bit more exposed. As well as that, on the reservoir for the brake, there's a little breather hole on there, and that does tend to, especially when you're moving around the pedals, that does tend to blow a little bit of brake fluid out of that. Now, the brake fluid hasn't destroyed anything. I'm not actually sure what they use in here. I do believe it is actually brake fluid, but some of that has spilled over, so that hasn't been ideal. I'd love to see that at least suppressed, a little hat on that so that it wouldn't spill out all over the place. Maybe some of it went in transport as well, because I found some of it around the pedals. I'm not actually 100% sure of that, but that's something, you know, a little thing that they could possibly work on. So yeah, from a build quality point of view, and I mean, I'm basing this not solely on my impressions here, but also from footage that I've seen of the testing of these pedals. They make a big deal about the fact that they test these, kind of like what you have in IKEA, where they're opening and closing drawers or sitting on mattresses, you know, and doing that millions and millions of times. They do that with these pedals. They tell us what they're rated for. So Asetek Simsports, for example, they're able to tell us that their brake is good up to 180 kgs of pressure. They can also tell us that the pedal itself can easily withstand 200, but even burst pressures of 700 kgs. And they've shown us pictures of broken pedals, and they've redesigned this several times just to make sure that whatever we throw at it, it can take. We don't know that with the Simagic. That said, the construction is extremely good. They do know what they're doing, but from a quality point of view, Asetek is really talking the talk and they seem to be walking the walk. That said, Simagic has built a reputation for themselves with their wheelbases and their other products for being very, very high quality as well. So this is a very, very tough one, and it's a little bit unusual for a new product out of the gate. So they've not released any other products to us other than their cooling equipment. So their cooling equipment maybe is playing a little factor in my mind here as well. The fact that they're showing us how they test it, they're giving us great guarantees and confidence with it. They're showing it being used by real racing drivers. Asetek is not a brand new brand in the sense that they have been making PC cooling components and they deliver those components to massive brands all over the world. Brands that are probably already in your PC if you're liquid cooled. So they know about quality, and that is a huge, huge reassurance. Now that said, at the same time, Simagic has proven themselves with their products that they know how to make high quality products. And even though Simagic is only around 2 years and the Asetek pedals are only around a couple of weeks so far, we know to expect very high-end established business practices and quality from Asetek. We also are coming to expect that from Simagic, which is not something that I was anticipating 2 years ago when I first reviewed one of their wheelbases. So for that reason, the build quality of the Invicta gets a 10 out of 10. I just cannot fault it. Nothing is strange about it. There is of course the purposeful omission of those bump stops at the end of the travel, which is something that's done by design. It's not necessarily a quality issue, but the Asetek pedals, when they reach the end of their travel, it's kind of a metal on metal sound. We don't get that with the Simagic. Again, that's a design thing, not necessarily a quality thing. Simagic pedals have their own little noises, so do the Asetek pedals. I have never used a high-end set of pedals that doesn't make a little bit of noise. I generally don't tweak that noise out of it during the review period just to see how bad it actually gets. I don't want to mask it and then somebody else gets it and, well, how come you didn't say anything about the sound? So if any of you do experience any weird sounds or creaking or whatever, a little bit of PTFE dry lubricant, spray it in the right places, not too excessively, and it should just go away. That's generally the solution with all high-end pedal sets. So yeah, 10 out of 10 for the Aseteks and 9 out of 10 for Simagic. And last but not least, and this is kind of a broad category, I want to talk about the versatility of these products. Now, there are two major things that I'm not too sure that the market will love about the Invicta pedals. The first being a slight lack of adjustability. The brake pedal in particular is very, very short, very stiff. Now, I like it that way, but a lot of people don't like it that way. They want lots of travel and they want lots of feel throughout that travel. You can get a decent, in my opinion, a decent amount of travel, but nowhere near as much as you can get with the Simagic pedals. So with the Simagic pedals, you get a hell of a long throw. You can make these feel exactly like a road car, or you can set them up really stiff like the Invicta pedals. The choice is yours, and you get lots of different springs to set that up. And if you really want it tweaked to exactly how you like it, I think that the Simagic's probably more for you. That's my first point about versatility. My second point about versatility, and this is quite a big one. As it stands right now, the pedal faces on the Invicta, I don't like them. I don't like them without shoes. I don't like them with shoes. They are far too grippy and they're a little bit too pronounced. So they hurt your feet over time if you're not wearing shoes. And even when you are wearing shoes, if you imagine, let me grab a shoe there. So here we go with a shoe. If you imagine, so your racing shoes are quite grippy and you want these pedals, well, I want these surfaces to be quite slippy. On the Asetek, they're quite grippy. So what happens is when you press that throttle, the top of your shoe grips on the pedal, and if you're resting on the base plate, which I do, I rest on here. Some people do just press straight on the pedal and it won't be as much of an issue for you. I would still recommend shoes because it's very difficult when you're not wearing shoes. But what ends up happening is your toes grip to the pedal, and as you push, let me push that pedal there, you can see the heel goes up above the heel plate, and then when you're coming back, it's pushing your heel down into the top of the base plate. And it's even though your heel could potentially slide, you expect it to slide on the pedal face itself. Now the good news is that Asetek are going to release smooth pedal faces for this, but they are going to be an optional extra. So you're not going to be able to choose them with the Invicta pedals. So that's a bit of a problem. And it's something that just kind of irks me a little bit. Compare that to the Simagic, and they've got this really nice diamond cut style, even at the edges. It's a very smooth pedal face, but your pedal can actually, as you're pressing it, it's a little bit stiff here now, but as you're pressing it, there's just a little bit of give and it slides across even a grippy sole. So you have just that right amount of grip in the pedal, because you obviously don't want to be sliding everywhere, but it also doesn't drag your foot with it as you push it away. Same for the brake, same for the clutch. So the pedal faces, smooth pedal faces for me are an absolute must. So from a versatility point of view there, I definitely score the Simagic higher than I score the Asetek. They're kind of the main 2 points that I wanted to bring up when it comes to versatility, because they're probably the things that matter to you the most. For me, the throw on the Invicta pedals wouldn't be a deal breaker. The grippy pedal faces is a deal breaker until I can buy that optional extra. Those smooth pedal faces are an optional extra. They will drive the price of this even higher than the €1,200 that they already sit at. You get that as standard with the Simagic, and the Simagic also has that really nice long throttle plate, which I think is extremely good. Now that, again, that is an optional extra. But if somebody came in here right now and told me that I could only have one of these for the rest of my sim racing life, I'd have to choose the Simagic, because that, I just can't live with that. I'm sure you could fabricate something, you can use other pedal faces off other pedals or something like that, but as they stand, that, in my opinion, is not good for the consumer market. It may be great for the pros, I'm not sure, but even if you look at pro pedal sets, you can see lots of wear and tear from sliding. I already see lots of wear marks in my boots from these pedal faces, so and lots of marbling as well. I had to clean these up significantly before doing this video, because there was just marbling everywhere from the rubber on the bottom of my shoes. So versatility, the throttle throw and the grippiness just docks a couple of marks. The Simagic wins out there because they do everything pretty well. Even though the base plate isn't perfect, it doesn't have that nice heel rest like a lot of other base plates do, including the Invicta base plate. I gave the Invicta a score of 6 out of 10 for versatility. Now obviously adjust that for yourself, don't just take my word for it, that's just my opinion. 6 out of 10, and I give the Simagic a 9 out of 10. It was actually an 8 out of 10, then I just quickly thought of something else. You can move these pedals left and right as well. Can't do that on the Invicta pedals. For some people, they might want to, you can move the pedal faces on the brake pedal slightly. You can obviously move these brake pedals just one click to the left or the right. One click each side does significantly change the gap between the pedals. But from a versatility point of view, you might want to use this base plate and just ditch your clutch for a little while, and you can just move this over quite easily. Whereas here, they're very confined. I mean, that's realistic for a Formula cockpit or something like that, but some people just want that comfortable karting, kind of wide-legged stance. So with this base plate, you have that versatility. So that's another thing that's just really, really nice. So after all that, it's time to tot up the scores. I haven't seen the scores yet because I've only done the spreadsheet. I haven't actually totaled it up yet because I didn't want it to influence how I speak about these great pedal sets. So I'm going to just do that very quickly now. Oh my God, that is tremendously close. As you can see on the screen there, the Invicta got a score of 104 and the Simagic got a score of 105. Now there's very, very little in that, but if the things that I've mentioned about either pedal set, little bit of wobble, lack of throw, what else? Lack of versatility, you can't move the pedals left and right, little bit of spilled brake fluid, the clutch not being set up great from the factory, stuff like that, electronics not being too neat like they are in the Invicta, little things like that, if they annoy you, please adjust those scores accordingly, and hopefully this has given you enough information, enough that you can just be a little bit more confident about your purchase and yeah, enjoy your pedals. They're both incredible sets of pedals. Please don't take anything that I'm saying here the wrong way. It's just that I'm trying to inform people, I'm trying to equip people with the right information so that they can make an informed decision. If you buy it and then find out a week later, oh well, why didn't Lawrence tell me this? He had them. And if you're an active member of my community, I wouldn't really like to live with that on my conscience, because I have had both pedals here. Also, important note, I haven't released my full review on these pedals yet. It is very, very close to being complete, and I'm in the process of reviewing these as well. So I have more time with the Simagic than I do with the Invicta, but I have enough time with both to be able to make these comparisons that I've made in this video. I can't see anything that I've said in this video changing over the next couple of weeks. If it does, I will definitely tell you in my Discord. Join my Discord. There's a channel in there dedicated to hardware under review. If you have any more questions, pop in there, ask me. For now, I'm Lawrence. I'll chat to you later.